So we are going over domain and range today. You're going to need two highlighters. The skills are number 13, number 23, number 29, and 52. So domain and range. Oh, let's go ahead and write vocabulary down real quick. So the next term is domain. Domain is your X values. So you can look at the X-axis to determine what the X values are. And so we are also going to put boundaries from left to right. So we have the acronym of DOXIN, which stands for domain, X, and IN stands for independent variable. And then range is our next word, which is the Y values. And the Y-axis goes vertical. So we are going to look at low to high. So put boundaries from low to high, which is red. Range, Y value is a dependent variable. So with our highlighters, we're going to highlight the different axes. So like if it's S for domain, we're going to highlight the X-axis and see how how left and right it falls. And then range will be the Y-axis, and that'll tell us how low and how high it goes. So let's look at our notes for today. So DOXIN stands for domain, X values, and independent. It may ask you about the independent variable. So if it does, then that's what it's talking about. Range is red, so range, Y values, and independent. So on your actual test, you'll be able to use like a drawing tool or highlighting tool on the computer program, and you can highlight the X or Y axis depending on what it's asking you for. You can also use a transparency and a marker if you'd like to do that instead. So step 1 says determine if you will need to find domain or range or both. You can eliminate incorrect answer choices. So if it asks for domain, you'll look for the answer that says X. If it gives you G of X, F of X, or Y, then that's the range. So sometimes you'll see range as G of X or F of X. Because G of X and F of X are the same thing as saying Y. So don't let that confuse you. And domain is X. All right, number 2 says remember that domain X is left to right. So you'll highlight the X-axis if you're looking for domain. Range is the Y-axis. So you look at how low to how high it goes. Step 3 is all about notation. So if the domain and range is continuous with no beginning or ending point, it is written as negative infinity to positive infinity or all real numbers. You'll see arrows on the graph. So we'll have arrows going both directions, left and right, or down and up. Inequality, if it's an open circle, we use less than or greater than. Closed circle includes the or equal to, which is less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. On this problem, it says, what is the domain? So go ahead and highlight domain. I'm going to use the same color for domain and a different color for range. So because domain is X, go ahead and write X on there. Let's highlight the X-axis. So we're looking at the X-axis going from left to right. So we want to see what the boundaries are. So it goes as far as -1. And then right, it looks like it's at 2, but that arrow means it's going to go on and on to the right. So it goes to infinity. So it goes from -1 to infinity. So we got to find the answer choice that says that. So A says all real numbers greater than or equal to -1. So that means starts at -1 and goes greater. Does it start at -1 and go greater? Yeah. Yeah, so that one looks good. But before I commit to one answer choice, I want to go ahead and check all of them. Answer choice B. All real numbers greater than or equal to 1. That's saying it starts at 1, but it doesn't because it goes to -1. So that is not it. C says all real numbers. That's only if you have two arrows. Does it go to left and right to infinity? No. And then D, all real numbers greater than or equal to -1 and less than or equal to 5. So that's saying it goes from -1 to 5. This one starts at -1 and goes to infinity because the arrow means it goes on and on forever. So D is out. So the only one that works is A. Go ahead and glue this in. Let's look at the problems that we have. Go ahead and read the problem to yourself. This is asking for domain and range. Domain is the X values. The way you show work on these problems is by highlighting. I'm going to use green for domain, but you get to decide what you're going to use. So I'm going to do one at a time. So I know domain is X's. So before I even begin, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can narrow down my choices. So domain is X, domain is X, X, X. Can't narrow down my choices that way. But now I can look and see on the x-axis, how far does it go? Left to right. So my boundaries are -7 to 6. So let's look at, this says -4 to 5. A is out. B, -7 to 6. Okay, that looks good. C, -4 to 5. Nope. D is -7 to 6. So I just need to see what's different about B and D compared to each other. Look at our inequality symbol. What do we notice about these two dots? Yes. Stop. So B is out. So D is the correct answer, but I do want to check range. So range goes low to high. So that's -4 to +5. -4 to +5. And it's closed circle, so that means D is correct. Number 2, go ahead and read that to yourself. So we've got to know which values it's asking for. So the very last sentence says, which set best represents the range? So we are going to highlight the y-axis. We don't even care about the domain. So before you start going and highlighting the x or y-axis, know what you're looking for first. So if it asks for both of them, start with domain. If it only asks for range, only do range. So range is the y values. So what's different about this is we have points. So if you have points and it's not a line, it's not continuous, you're going to make a list of those values. So we need to know what the possible values are according to the dots. And we're only looking at the y-axis, so we don't even care about this at all. So if you look at your answer choices, look at J. J is the domain, but we're asked for the range. But every time they will put the domain on there just to see if you really know what domain and range are. So J is out because it lists out the domain, the X values. So we just need to make a list of the Y values. So the Y's are how high it goes. So I know for sure 96 is that. Then we look here. Oh, yeah. So we can get rid of G. So then the next one. So then I look here. It's not at 84. So if I look at my answer choices, that has 84. We know 84 is not there. So it must be 88. I'm going to go ahead and write that down. And then that one looks like halfway between. So 96, 88, that looks about like 80. So that's good. Then this would be at 72. And this one's a little bit above 60. So I think 64 looks right. 56 is right. Yep, that looks good. And then 48. So yeah, H is correct. So you'll make a list if it's just points. That's the only one on this assignment that's just points. Go ahead and do number 3. So this says range. So we're only looking at the y-axis. We don't care about the x-axis at all. So the only numbers we're looking at are the y. So look at how low it goes and how high it goes. Yeah, A says -3, and it's -3 is right here, so no. Right. That would be domain, but the thing is, they changed it to Y instead of X. Okay, this one's open, so it's going to have that symbol on the -8. This one's closed, so it's going to be a less than or equal to. So that was on our notes right here. Open circle has the less than or greater than. Closed circle represents or equal to. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So this is open. So at -9, it's an open circle. And then at 8, it's a closed circle. So the reason why C doesn't work is because it doesn't have arrows. If it was the same line, but instead of these dots, it had arrows, it would be all real numbers. And this one is saying that that's closed, and then that's an open. So that's wrong. Go ahead and read the next one. Do that on your own. So this says, what is the range? Range is y. So go ahead and highlight all of your y-axis. It says greater than or equal to 3. So that means at 3 or above. So y values are greater than or equal to 3. That's what that is telling us. So that means it's going to be at 3 or greater. Because we're talking about our y-axis, it's going to be at 3 and above. So look at those and see which one starts at 3. This is at 3 and below. These are at -3, so those are out. At 3 or below, that's out. At 3 or above. Okay, go and do the next one. So this asks you to do domain of all real numbers less than -4. So domain is your x-axis. So highlight your x-axis on all of them. And so it's domain, so it's x, is less than or equal to -4. No, it just says less than, sorry. So that means it's going to be an open circle. So we know for that for sure. All of our answer choices are open, so it's fine. We wanted to start. So see how this one on the x-axis it's at 0. So that is not it. This one's at -4, so that's okay. This one's at -4, that's okay. This one's at 0 again. So remember the x-axis goes left and right. So if it says less than -4, that means it's at -4. What numbers are less than -4? -5, -6. So look at your values. Is it going to get smaller on the x-axis, or is it going to get greater?